Good evening, everyone, and you're listening to FANNATION. It's Nadine Emile, and let me just start, Ahmed, by asking you that question. Can you tell us more about the book? Because I'm very curious, because horror is not very common here in Egypt, and we'll be talking about that later on. So tell us more about the idea behind the book, and how did you think of it?
Well, since I was a kid, I've always been reading, fantasy books and horror books, usually from, the British Council Library or whatever. And usually I loved the books, but I never read a book that had a character named Ahmed or Rami or something like that. And it happened, the story happens in Cairo or Egypt.
Okay.
So since I think I was a teenager, I wanted to read a book that was a horror book, had vampires, monsters in it or something, and had Egyptians in it. So it never happened. No one wrote it. I kept waiting and waiting till I was 28.
Okay.
And then I decided to write it, and I had no idea I was going to publish it. I just wrote it for fun. Because I've been writing short stories since I was a kid.
Okay.
So I tried it out, and I liked the first draft, so I kept working on it till I was satisfied that it was okay. And then I sent it to a couple of publishers, hoping they would take the risk, and a couple of publishers agreed. I picked one, and voila, it happened.
And here comes the book.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons that I found, not just it's original that you're doing a horror novel, which we don't find it even in Arabic, I think, but yeah, we don't have enough often horror movies or books. But what I really like is the idea that you are doing a book tour, and you're collecting artists together, and you're doing something different. So can you tell us more about the book tour and the idea behind it, and if someone would go to the tour, what to expect?
Well, to start with, the idea behind the tour came from I organized a couple of festivals last year, a couple of music and film festivals.
Okay.
I just went to different venues and watched different bands, and I picked the bands or the artists that I liked, and I thought they were doing something different, like what I'm doing, more or less, even if they are not writers, but their work is different. It's alternative music, so, and they're not really getting the exposure that they should be getting. So I just called them up and told them I'm doing this book tour, and I would love to use it as an opportunity for us to band together and just show our work to people. Although it's a book and it's a horror book, and they are musicians and their music is not horrifying in any way, but they also do alternative. Their music is alternative, and it's not the typical Egyptian music. So I just thought of doing it, coming together and just going around Cairo and showing our work to different people at different stops, and also showing people that reading could be fun. That the idea of just art could be fun. It doesn't have to be stuffy, because book signings are usually very boring. Have you ever been to one?
Yeah, I mean, I did.
Yeah, they are usually, of course, sometimes they are great, but mostly they are just typical, boring. Even as a writer and as a reader, I find most of them very, very boring. So I wanted to do something different, and also the book is aimed at teenagers. So I would love it if they got introduced to reading in such a fun way.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that this kind of, the idea behind the tour would introduce different artists and introduce also Egyptian teenagers to this kind of funky reading event. Whatever.
Okay. And good evening. You are listening to FANNATION. This is Nadine Emile and Ayman Badri at the controls. And with me, I do have Ahmed Khalifa, who is the writer of Beware the Stranger, which is the first English language horror novel in Egypt. Hello, Ahmed.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm fine.
All right. So I do have lots of questions for you, and listeners as well are asking you questions. But let me first start with this. I mean, horror and Egypt, they, ironically, although our reality has the word horror one way or another in the country, but it never succeeds. I mean, when you see a horror movie, an Egyptian horror movie, it tends to go towards a comedy sometimes, because the elements of horror here in Egypt doesn't fit in a way, I don't know, or the novels. So why you think that is going around? The horror is not, do you think it's not successful, or do you think people are not making it well?
Well, I think there are people who are making it, really well, or making good movies, or probably more good literature. I haven't seen a good horror movie in Egypt, I think, since the 80s, I think.
I can't. Yeah, I don't know.
But I've read a lot of good, suspense and horror books lately. There is like this, resurgence of good literature, good suspense literature in like the past couple of years, maybe 3 years or something. But movies, I can say, I think because making horror movies is actually much more difficult than making like social dramas or
effects wise, I mean, or
no, it's not effects, because if you see my movie, it doesn't have any effects in it at all. But just making horror movies usually depends on atmosphere. It depends on, you have to really know your craft. You have to really know how to use the camera, the sound. In order to make good horror movies, and you have to watch a lot of horror movies. You have to love the genre itself.
Okay.
I haven't met a lot of filmmakers. I've met a lot of great filmmakers in Egypt who just don't like the genre itself. They think it's very Western. I don't know why, but they think it's a very Western kind of genre. They don't think it's very Egyptian, which I find really, really strange, because horror is an emotion. It doesn't have a nationality.
But that's the thing. That brings me to my other question. We did receive a call from Sharif Nuruddin, who wants to congratulate you for the book, and that brings me to his question: is how can you make horror Egyptian in a way? What are the elements aside? Because when you see a horror movie, whatever, zombies or vampires or whatever, it seems, or stereotypically, it seems like there are Western elements. How do you make the horror Egyptian?
Well, making horror, horror.
It sounds weird, the phrase, but
actually, I've been asked this question before, not phrased in this exact way. You phrased it well. Other people didn't phrase it just as well. But I think making horror Egyptian in one way or another, it's just making your characters feel real to Egyptians. Whether they are in the book or in the movie. When they see the movie or read the book, they have to feel that your characters are real. Someone they might be able to recognize as a friend, as a brother, sister, mother. If your characters are real, you can do whatever you want. You can bring in vampires like I did in my book. Although I don't like to say that it's a vampire book, it is, but it ruins part of the plot. But hey, it's been out there for a while.
Okay.
But you can bring in anything. Just the characters have to be real. You have to relate to them as an Egyptian.
So do you think it's more about the characters? I mean, or do we accept as Egyptians to have ghosts in the streets of Cairo, or vampires behind the tree? I mean, if the characters are well written, you think it will really make people believe it? Or you think for us as Egyptians, no, it won't work? It's only in the American setting,
No, I think it might work, as evidenced by the second Ola Barakat book, which is Diary of a Psychiatrist, which is a bestseller now, actually. But her book is very successful because it's very well written, which is, of course, number one. But also, she has addressed horror from like a mythology point of view. Like she's addressing Jinn, the idea of someone going crazy from seeing ghosts, using religion to battle horror. So she's addressing it from this point of view, which is, I think, maybe more popular in our culture. But I believe that you can also do other stuff. You can also you can stay away from these things or integrate them in the plot, but also do other things like using vampires, using ghosts, using hauntings. I think people will respond, and they are responding in one way or another. Just a very interesting fact. I was speaking with a film distributor a couple of months ago, and she was telling me that the most popular kind of American movies in Egypt that make the most money are usually horror movies.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, there is something about horror movies that attracts people. I mean, we want to get scared one way or another as audience and readers.